Hmm. Well, you just sold me actually the Heiligenstein. I can't wait to taste them. I haven't tasted yet, but this is the kind of tasting profile I really like. I also
Yeah,
come from the Lake Balaton, and that's, I don't know if you know these wines. It's on the
yeah,
northern shore.
yeah. Sure, I've been there. Yeah,
Ah, perfect. Okay. So you know these wines kind of. This is also very basalt-like soil, this really dark minerality, and that's the stuff I grew up on.
yeah,
So I like this.
yeah. And if maybe if you want to see a tendency for me, Heiligenstein always needs at least 1-2 years longer to really show its full potential.
Mm.
Whereas Geisberg for me is more approachable already in its youth compared to
Hmm.
the Heiligenstein. And yeah, I mean the Heiligenstein is definitely the, how should I say, probably the star and the more known and more famous
Hmm.
appellation. But since I'm always a fan and supporter of the underdogs, I'm a personal fan of the Geisberg. So I really love the precision and the high degree of freshness and acidity of the Geisberg, which yeah, I think is very special about it.
Hmm. Okay, thank you. And what about the
But
Renner?
but
Because
we never agree in the family though.
maybe, and that's also maybe varying from vintage to vintage, right?
Yes, exactly,
Mm.
exactly. That's why I always find it a bit amusing that every year, every year, no matter at which producer you look, the Heiligenstein is the best Riesling in the portfolio. If you want to believe the ratings of
Ah,
magazines, let's
okay.
put it like that.
Yeah, that's somehow come up to be first, right? It's kind of written.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit about Renner? Because there you
Yeah,
produce
sure,
Grüner,
sure.
right?
Yes, Reyna is actually a very, for me, a very interesting spot for Grüner Veltliner because it's a bit atypical. The Reyna basically is also part of the Geisberg. Because what I didn't mention is the Heiligenstein for me is one soil type where you have the Riesling planted, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
with the difference, of course, that you have some vineyards which are a bit higher up, closer to the forest belt on top, and other vineyards which are more on the bottom where the soil gets a little richer. So also the wines tend to be a little bit richer from those producers that produce or have the vineyards more at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
With Geisberg, it's different. Geisberg, the whole hill basically is planted, all sides basically. The east-facing sides, the south side, and also the west side. Only the north side isn't planted because it basically reaches the plateau, yeah, on the north. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So on the Geisberg, you have different soil types. The part looking towards the east and southeast on the bottom is very rich in löss, and underneath you have the schist. That's where the Grüner Veltliner is planted. The
Mm-hmm.
upper part, so the upper belt and also the plateau on top, that's where you mostly find Riesling, because there you have almost no topsoil, and immediately you have the schist starting. And also the west side is very meager, so not a lot of topsoil and mostly planted with Riesling. And a very special part of the Geisberg is actually the western or southwestern foothill, so the last part of on the bottom of the Geisberg, because that's the Reyna Vineyard. So it's heavily influenced by the Geisberg. A lot of the soil is basically eroded material from the Geisberg. So you have a lot of rock components in it, like schist, a little bit of amphibolite, which you also find parts of amphibolite blocks within the Geisberg that then you find also in the Reyna on the bottom. And it's a very warm spot. So both you have rather meager soil, and it's very warm from its exposure. And this really requires a Grüner Veltliner to have a certain age there. So we have in total 1.5 hectares there, but only half a hectare we are using for the Erste Lage wine, because the other hectare is still younger vineyards. And what we see is that in years that are, for example, very warm, very dry, we need to pick the young vineyards earlier just to not stress them. And then, of course, for me, the quality is not exactly where I want it to be for the Premier Cru, for the Erste Lage. So it's a very challenging soil for Grüner. But if you have old plants there, I think they can almost get this Riesling-ish sort of appearance. So they become very tight, very pronounced acidity, very elegant, very different to the sort of more classical Lössveltliner, which becomes a little bit more exotic, more herbal, bit more richer in taste. Reyna is always a bit atypical, I would say. Yeah. Yes, and then it's a bit like same comparison with Riesling, Geisberg, and Heiligenstein. Reyna Grüner Veltliner compared to Geisberg Grüner Veltliner always needs this 1 or 2 extra years to really show its full potential. And I think it really has to do with this more sort of meager, challenging terroir that we find there.
Mm-hmm. And that 1 hectare, what you use for the Premier Cru, how old are the vines there?
They are between 40 and 50 years old, so they're not all the same age. It's in total, it's 2 different. So it's 2 parcels that we use for the Premier Cru. So
really old, yeah.
Yeah, rather old. And the young vineyards, they're about 10. They're some 10 years old, but yeah, I mean, they still end up in the village wine, in the village appellation.
And what is maybe your favorite kind of profile that you look for in a wine? Also nationally, in the country, or in Austria, or internationally? Because I guess you traveled a lot in the world, so you've kind of picked up some tastes or tasting profiles, what you really like, or maybe what you aim for, and that's actually doable in Camptown.
Well, personally, I have sort of a tendency to more elegant, acidity-driven wines, no matter if it's white or red. So obviously I love some of the German Rieslings. This is really a taste profile that meets my personal taste, and luckily I'm able to make wine in the Camptal, which I think is one of the few spots in the world actually that can produce very elegant, light, fresh white wines that also on the other hand side have amazing aging potential. And I think that's the biggest treasure of our area. And I think this is really what I want to express. I want to express a sense of place in our wines, that people, no matter if they grab a bottle of Grüner or Riesling, that they say, oh, this could be Camptal, because of this sort of very clean, cool sort of appearance of the wine. Not too aromatic, not overpowered by varietal character and fruit, but more on this sort of subtle sort of flavors and nuances. That's what I personally like. So not a big fan of overly aromatic wines. I like it if it's more, if wines are more settled. And I think that's also what we are great here in the area, because we really make food wines, I think, that pair well with food because they're not overpowering.
And what do you really pair? Maybe also some local cuisine with your wines. What do you have, some favorite pairings where you, okay, that's Sunday, I have some time.
Yeah.
What's gonna do?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we get nice fresh fish from one of our lakes, that's probably for me always the perfect match with a nice slightly aged glass of Grüner. This is something that I really enjoy. Or Riesling. This is probably one of my favorite pairings. And then Yeah, I mean the classics. Obviously, I mean a good schnitzel with a nice, fresh, younger glass of Grüner Veltliner is always also
Mm.
a nice option. And but also, you know, like the daily sort of jause, the cold
Yeah.
food platter
Uh-huh.
with a nice glass of Grüner can be something very, very nice.
Yeah, doesn't have to be that complicated. Yeah.
No, that's what
Yeah.
as often it's the very simple
Exactly.
sort
Yeah.
of dishes that give you an amazing sort of experience with the wine
Yeah.
because it's just the perfect match.
Yeah. And I want to ask you about St. Laurent because that's actually one of my favorite grape
Mm,
varieties, and you also have some because I
mm,
also I
yes.
really like these elegant St. Laurents, which are really delicate and kind of sexy. You know, it's not like
Mm,
overwhelming oak or alcohol. And I never had the
mm,
great fortune to try yours. So what can we expect?
mhm. Well, I think you can expect something sexy because
Okay.
it's a, it's a, it's a rather, as you said, you know, St. Laurent is probably always one of the first vineyards that we pick.
Hmm.
So for example, the 2020, we have already picked it. It's always in the vineyard, it's really a diva. So as beautiful as it can be in as a wine, equally horrible it can be. It can treat you in the vineyard. It is really a diva. So very irregular flowering. So one year you have a good crop, the next year you have no crop.
Hmm.
Brown to rot, very skin delicate, very thin skin, very
Hmm.
delicate. So you need to also be very careful here. And then the way we produce it is very traditional. Again, we ferment it partly so whole berries and whole bunches in
Hmm.
open topped fermenters. We don't do big extraction. We only do very gentle punch downs to soak the cap, and that's
Hmm.
basically it. And then it goes into barrel for 2 years. Only used barrels, so
Hmm.
no new barrels. As you said, because we don't want to overpower with oak. It's because it's a rather delicate
Yeah.
and light style of red. And usually we end up somewhere between 12 and 12 and a half alcohol. And but great acidity, and as it's the same thing as with our whites. Yeah, the acidity is what provides the wine with its backbone for aging and character, and not the alcohol or the oak or whatever.
Okay, you just sold me this wine. I will try this
Yeah.
for sure. And also about this maybe Chardonnay and Grauburgunder or Pinot Blanc and Grauburgunder.
Mm-hmm.
How because you said
Mm-hmm.
Grauburgunder is handled in a barrique, right? And
Yes.
Pinot Blanc.
Pinot Blanc is fermented and aged in big wooden casks.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
So
so
3,000 liter neutral barrels. Yeah. So
mhm,
no oak influence exactly. And the same is true for the Chardonnay. Really, the Pinot Gris is the only one where we use on purpose some oak influence.
mhm,
And yeah, it has to do with I mean, it was a process. The Burgundy varieties were mostly planted all by my father when he joined basically my mom in the company. My dad comes from the Wagram area, and there let's say the varieties like Weißburgunder, Chardonnay were always a bit
mhm,
more
mhm.
common than so that basically was something that he brought when he basically took over with my mom. Um, and and we have a lot of great spots for those varieties. And I think that is why you see not just us, but also other wineries from the area producing very great examples of Pinot Blanc and Pinot Grigio or Chardonnay from the area.
Mhm.
And with the Pinot Gris, it was a bit of a process. My father said to me, because he said when he first made it, he didn't know so really like, yeah. and first he started with this very light style, you know, Pinot Grigio back then in the 90s when my parents took over was very much in fashion, and nobody wanted it, he said. Nobody wanted it. And then he said, okay, he needs to change something. Then he was made more like a classical Grüner. But then also this was a bit tricky because, you know, if people are looking for a classical Grüner, they buy a Grüner, not a Pinot Gris. And at some stage, he said, okay, what is really what I like, also internationally seen when I think about Pinot Gris and Grauburgunder. And it was more this sort of style that they used to do. They also do in Friaul or parts of the Alsace, where you use some oak influence, but not overly, not like heavily oaked, and a more full-bodied, richer style. And this was the perfect sort of way or method in the end, because that people really started appreciating this taste. And also, I think for my dad, this was the right way, or it felt the right way for him, because it was the way he liked the wine the most. And meanwhile, it's become almost one of our sort of icon wines at the winery.
Yeah, and that's actually when I first smelled it, I thought it had some botrytis on it, but now you said it's no botrytis.
No, actually, there's no botrytis with,
because it was so spicy somehow.
Yeah, no, I mean, of course, I mean, if it's 2% botrytis berries, this could be, but we're not working with botrytis there. So so luckily, even though it's a rainy vintage this year, they are still very healthy, the grapes. But from the first moment where we see, okay, now it's starting, we pick it, because botrytis, you know, on the Pinot Gris, we go straight from press to barrel. So we do no sedimentation. We just straight go to barrel. So we take a lot of the particles and skin parts with us. So it would be a very risky thing if you have botrytis with it, because then the whole microbiology gets a little bit tricky, and then also you need high amounts of sulfur, which we don't want, and that would be in contrast with what we want to do.
Thank you for the little introduction of the portfolio. That was really impressive, I think. And all your wines I open with a great confidence. So thank you. And
happy to hear that.
But now I want to talk about the gym, because that's also a very great project, of course, and probably also love of yours.
Yes.
And
actually,
I looked up a little bit about the story, because but let me hear from you.
Yeah. So actually, the gin really happened to us, you can say. I mean, I did my master's studies in Madrid, and there probably on every second corner you find a small bar. And each bar has a big portfolio of gin, and everybody drinks a lot of gin and tonic there. So as a student, I couldn't come around the gin and tonic drinking there, and I really sort of fell in love with the product gin. And when I came back home, basically, more or less the same thing happened to my best friend during his studies. And then we became big gin lovers, the two of us, basically. So we went to a lot of places where they had a great selection of gin. We tried a lot of gin. We obviously also had we still have our big private portfolio of different gins from all around the world. And you know, it then was one of those days where you sit together for a little longer, and then you come up with those great ideas. And it really was like, I still remember his sentence. He was like, come on, man, Lorenz, you can make wine. Why can't you not make a gin for us? And I was very self-confident in this moment. I said, of course I can, no problem. And that's basically how it started. And it actually was not that easy as I thought. It took us 1.5 years to really come up with a great recipe that we loved, both of us. And then we only made it for us and some friends, and we gave it away as a present, but we never had the clear plan to really sort of start marketing it. And so also this happened a bit like a coincidence, because good friend of mine also is one of our wine distributors in Austria, and I gave him a bottle as a present basically. And the week later he calls me like, "This gin?" I said, "Yes, we make this gin. I think we would love to sell this in Austria. Could you imagine making more?" And that's how it started. And then we talked obviously together, because also my best friend, he has a full-time job just like me in the winery. And I said, okay, let's do it. And then we came up with a name, a branding, and all this. And now 4-5 years later, we are very happy with the result and also the way our product is positioned. We are very confident.
Perfect. And to maybe just go back to the beginnings, what did you study before you joined the wine?
I basically went to on high school level to winemaking school in Krems, and afterwards I studied business. Okay. So it was business studies.
So actually the gin brought you back to Kamptal, or was it always the plan to go back?
No, it was the plan. It was the plan. I had the agreement with my father when I'm done with my master's studies that I would work for 1 year in the winery. And after 1 year we will again sit down and see if we're both happy, and if I want to continue, or if maybe I work somewhere else for a couple of years and then maybe come back. But we never had this conversation. I'm still here, so it somehow felt right. Yeah, I mean, I was always a person that was always interested also in other stuff, but deep inside me, I think, I somehow always knew that I want to be in the wine world at least, and I think I'm very glad that I have the possibility of doing. It's a privilege. I see it as a privilege, and very happy that would take over this for my parents.
It's good to hear. And who is your friend? Who you are making with this?
Marco. He's basically he's a friend since forever. I think since we played soccer together when we were like 16, 17 years. And since then we're best friends, and luckily it never changed.
And he also had a clue about winemaking, or?
Not really. He's meanwhile a big wine lover because of me. But I mean, he comes from the Wachau Valley, so he always grew up around wine. But they have a lot of apricot trees, so that his grandfather and his parents are sort of cultivating. But his parents were never like winemakers or farmers, so he comes from a different background.
And what is that secret recipe that you have? Maybe can you talk a little bit about it, Jim?
Because then it wouldn't be a secret recipe then anymore.
Yeah, I know, but I had to try,
Yeah. No, well, listen, it's what we wanted to produce is also, because I think that's part of also of our philosophy, is that we want to, just like with the wine, express a sense of place also with the gin. So it was for us very clear that the botanicals that we are using for the gin, they need to come from our area. So in our mindset, it made no sense to use some very exotic botanicals that we don't really have here, to sort of give gin its flavor profile. So we're using stuff that grows here. Partly we even have it as a cover crop in the vineyards. So rosemary, lavender, basil, lemon, citrus verbena we are using, because lemons don't really grow here. To get the citrus taste. The only thing, very honestly speaking, that we haven't managed to get in the same quality as we are getting it right now from our own botanical gardens is the juniper. The juniper we get from Croatia, because it's we're experimenting a lot because we have our own sort of small like botanical garden in the Wachau, where we experiment with it on the stone terraces with juniper. But you need a lot of heat and sunlight to get really nice concentration of the juniper. But apart from the juniper, basically everything comes from our area and forests and vineyards. And what I can also tell you, there's a little bit of apricots in it. I mean, that was something we couldn't come around as being from the Wachau Kamptal area.
And how, because you never made gin before, right? That was also your first gin.
Yeah, it was the first spirit that I made or that we made.
So how did you come around? So you just start to read a lot about this and kind of
I mean, obviously during my education you had a little sort of introduction and crash course on how spirits are produced, and the very basics. And a good friend of my father was a fruit distiller, so spirit producer so apricot spirit and from pears. And I always used to help, so I knew how it's working. But the gin thing really was something where we, as I said, I mean, it took us 1.5 years with a lot of trials on what temperature we're gonna go for with the distilling process, how long we do the maceration process of the different herbs and fruits. If we only macerate or we also percolate. Percolation is when the steam goes through it only, but it's not sort of boiling in the during the process in the warm mixture of spirit and fruits. So for example, some of the botanicals we are using, they are very delicate. So if we would have them in the big sort of balloon and boiling in the mixture of water and spirit, they would get bitter. So we have them in a small bag, like a tea bag, hanging in the air within the bubble, and only the steam goes through it. So those are small things that you sort of, it's trial and error, really. Our gin, we made it by trial and error because we also had no stress, because there was no intention that we said, okay, we want to produce a product that we want to launch in 2 months. We said, hey, we want to make a really cool gin for the two of us. So we had no pressure, and it was basically, I always said it was a excuse for the girlfriends on the weekend to meet up
right,
and have some drinks.
But it's good to hear that you also like kind of that style of wine what you can produce, right, in the Kamptal region, or that's what you drink in your free time, and that's you also produce the gin what you have in your free time, and that you had the opportunity and also a partner for it. So that's also no market pressure, no shuki.
Oh. And then I think and as I said, and then we had great timing, because by the time we were experimenting with it, gin was not such a big thing yet in Austria. In Austria, it came a little later, and then we had this product, and everything sort of automatically started happening. And but what we also said is we always want to keep it a very personal thing, the gin, for us. So we don't want to make crazy volumes just because now it's trendy. We had the possibilities to make more, but we on purpose said no, because then we would need to buy in a lot of the botanicals, because we cannot grow them ourselves anymore. So we said no, we want to keep it a smaller thing, a more personal thing, that where the people really know, or where we also know the people that drink it and sell it very closely. because in the end I think this is always the most sustainable way when you make a product.
Yeah. Okay. And also that you want to sell the product what you love to people.
Exactly, to people that like it equally.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, cool.
Because it's not, our gin is for sure not like the looking at a price segment, not the cheapest, but for someone who really loves gin, I think it's a fair product.
Yeah, true. And also the branding is really cool on that. I have to give you.
Yeah, that you need to. I need to pass on to Marco, because he's the creative guy with all the branding and graphics.
I can also recommend you look up the Wildstück is the name of the gin, and look up the video also what you produced or what you are a part of.
Yeah,
very nice.
Yeah.
And maybe what are your future plans also with the gin and with the wine making?
Actually, we have a lot of stuff going on in the farm right now, because in 2015, when I joined, basically, my first great idea was to sort of expand our vineyard area inside the Strassertal Valley again, because the Strass Valley used to have a lot of vineyards planted on the sort of steeper parts of the valley sides, but since they had the problem that the grapes couldn't get ripe, or were very high in acidity, lower yields, harder to work because it was steeper there. A lot of the winemakers moved basically to the flatter area where the valley opened up. And what we did is, the last 5 years, we in total recultivated 5 hectares of vineyards there, because we believe that this somehow will be a bit of the future of our small area, because I mean, this year is a bit of an exception, but all the other years before, we saw that the temperatures are going up, it's getting warmer, acidity is getting lower, alcohol is getting higher. So we expanded there quite a bit and recultivated a lot. So that kept us very busy the last 5 years. And we are constructing a new cellar this November, but at the site. So we are expanding the current production, because my father, when he basically took over with my mom, they had basically built the facilities for about a winery with some 20 hectares. And since we are cultivating 30 already, and another 5 are going to come in from this new vineyard project, we need to expand a bit the winery. And this is going to happen straight after the harvest. So I'm a bit nervous.
Never be bored.
No, I won't be bored, I think.
And with the gin?
Yeah, and also the gin, the gin is using up a lot of space, or more space, at the winery. So there will be a own small sort of part of the building that will be dedicated to the gin. Just to have also a clear own home of the gin, because right now gin and wine, there's like one pellet of wine here, and then there's a bit of gin, and then there's it's a bit chaotic currently. Yeah.
And do you work on maybe another recipe, or do you want to keep this and this is the best?
No, I know this is we get this question obviously a lot also from clients, partners, friends, but we said how should I mean, first of all, I say never say no, because maybe we get the feeling that we're interested in something, and then we might try out something. But our basic or principal idea is that we have this one gin. That's it. That was our basically creation, and we don't want to produce now a Wildstück strength with more alcohol because it's now trendy, or we don't want to produce a slow berry because there is a need. Because we said we want to make this one product that's really for us, and also it has to do with a bit of obviously resources. I mean, if we start expanding the portfolio and this and that, it will request more time, and then also I think the original idea that we had with it won't same, and that's why we want to keep it the way it is, basically.
And how do you usually drink it? With what? With which tonic or with which combination?
I mean, in general, I always I haven't mentioned this. So our idea actually when we produced it also was that it is a gin that also you can enjoy pure, so that you also would appreciate pure, because we felt that a lot of gins were made only for being mixed, because pure they were not really nice in the way they felt on the palate and in the aroma spectrum. So that's one thing that we always wanted to have, that our gin, when you drink it room temperature, it's still smooth, nice, and a high qualitative, high quality spirit, basically. And that's why when you mix it with tonic, we recommend always a tonic that's not too sweet, so a rather dry tonic, and with the what we found very nice with it is, for example, the Aqua Monaco tonic. That was one of our personal favorites. It's a small tonic producer in Bavaria, and maybe from the big brands, the very known brands, probably the Fentimans is a very nice match, because it has this very citrusy taste, and since our gin doesn't have a lot of those Mediterranean citrusy sort of also flavor components, since they don't grow in our area, this is a nice complement, exactly. And the garnish, a lemon zest, and that's it, not too much, because then the more you put in, the more you sort of
lose the original taste,
or the less you will taste of the original gin. I mean, gin tonic can also be can be it can be in bars, the way they prepare it, and with a lot of components, and it's a great experience, but then it's not so much, you don't have so much of the original taste anymore. So it really depends on what you want.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Laurent. It was a great deep dive into the product, and I don't really want to rob more of your time. Thank you really much. And maybe just one question: how is this vintage? Because every comment I heard from any producer I'm in touch with, they said it's gonna be historical, like in Austria.
Well, it's definitely historical, because it's a tricky one. Okay. 2019 was this amazing vintage where everything was easy, perfect summer, perfect autumn. 2020 was different. It was, first of all, we had a very dry spring. Then we were in desperate need for rain, and then we got a lot of rain during flowering and also the period after. So it was already, with regard to vineyard management, a rather tricky vintage. Then summer here, we had not so much sunshine hours, quite a lot of rain during summer. And I honestly have to say that in at least in the Danube Valley, the great September that we had so far really, for me, rescued the quality, because we had an amazing September, which really brought again another boost of ripeness and aroma to the grapes. And now we had a bit of rain again, and I think 2020 will be a vintage again where you will see maybe maybe a clearer difference between maybe winemakers that work a bit more accurate and others where not everything is done 100% accurate, because selection definitely is very important, and hand harvest this year. So I think it can be a great vintage because we have beautiful acidity levels in the grapes. We have great taste profile, a very cool sort of flavors in the grapes. But I think it's not the easy one. I think a high degree of selection is necessary. A very good sorting is also important, and yeah, but the potential is definitely there to be a very good one.
Okay, happy to hear.
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, like obviously it's always always possible, yeah, to make a great wine also in a tricky vintage. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the skill of the winemaker then throughout the year and also during the vintage. But generally speaking, I think 2020 is not such an easy year like 19 was, for example. Yeah.
Okay, but I'm sure you're gonna do some goods in your cellar. So
no, definitely. I don't want to talk it bad, and
no,
you know,
I don't.
one experience that we made is very often, you know, like the supposedly trickier or not so good vintages. 10 years later, 10 years later, they surprise you so much, and then they actually overlap the stars from the young sort of when they were young vintages. So you never can say what's a great. It always depends at what time you are sort of evaluating the quality.
Okay, perfect, Lorenz. Thank you very much, really, for your time.
My pleasure. It was nice to talk to you.
It was nice to talk to you, and I hope to shake hands in the near future. And
yeah, definitely.
Drink some glasses together.
We will either you make it to the Kamptal or I will make it to the Tannheimer Tal.
Yeah, please, or both.
Yeah, even better.
Nice. Have a nice vintage and a great harvest.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Thanks a lot.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.